Okay, starting off with the Dendrobium hybrids. Lovely Phalaenopsis type there. Very deep colour. Camera's not doing that justice really. Only 2 entries though. That's a nobly type of some sort, although that's got other stuff in it, not just nobly. Nice lot of blooms on it though. There's that one. And there's Lynn's again, getting first of everything as usual. I think she said, I'm going to take that home and cut the blooms off. Yeah. Everybody else in the show clapped. Yeah. It did well though. It's done very, very well. And again, only entry in this section, oncidium hybrid or intergeneric. I think that one was at Bournemouth as well. You'll see a lot of plants that were in the Bournemouth video because of the joint membership, so you will recognise some of them from before. In the Coelogeny section, that's my friend Alan's Intermedia. That's going over now, not as good as it once was. However, I think that's his cristata as well, and that was still looking really good. Very healthy looking plant and good sets of spikes on it. Good number of blooms on the spikes too. And a couple of little rat's tails on the end. Sorry, dendrochilums. Not my favourite, but the one on the right was well bloomed, but they just don't do much for me, I'm afraid. The Vanda section was relatively thin, but I remember one year it only had 1 entry, and it was mine. And it was an Orangus, so that was a nice Vanda. That, I believe, is an Orangus, and that, if it is, that is very well bloomed. Possibly a hybrid, and I'm not quite sure what on earth that one is. As I say, I didn't read the names specifically, and the fact that the public were in, I was sort of getting jostled a bit and having to find gaps to actually film. Should have got on with it earlier, shouldn't I? Still, this little red one, very attractive Phalaenopsis, and whether you like Phalaenopsis or not, as far as shows are concerned, they're always going to be there. And as far as the public are concerned, they're an important part of the show, because they're the ones they relate to, because most people have got one at home. The most popular houseplant, certainly in the UK. So good selection of Phalaenopsis there. Paphs and frags, not my thing really, but out of the way they grow, I like these sort of paphs with the mottled leaves, so I do have a couple. Frags don't do so much for me because I find the plants themselves boring. It's almost like having a pot of grass. That's probably why I'm not so keen on the Cymbidiums as well. It's just the plant. The blooms are lovely, but they don't do a lot for me. And as far as I know, they're a bit more difficult to grow than the paphs. So, and sneaking over into another section without showing the card, I love this Masdevallia. The size of it, and lovely patterning and colours, whatever it is. And I can't remember whose it was either, but yeah, good plant. Yeah, that's an unusual Masdevallia, unusual shape. Now here we go, Masdevallia time. Slowly, 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 slowly. What about that then? That is Masdevallia ignea, and believe it or not, that's nowhere near as good as it was this time last year. Maybe mine will look like that one day. Huh. That'll be the day. Cattleya section had a few entries. I can remember one year that only had a couple of entries as well. I'm not quite sure what that is. It looks a bit like an epidendrum. Just not sure, basically. As I say, I didn't look at the tags. I mean, that is obviously your typical blousy Cattleya. It could be Bowringiana, not sure. But not a very attractive plant, but a good set of blooms, nicely arranged. I personally would have faced them all to the judge, rather than having several pointing backwards. This one didn't do a lot for me, but it was a nice healthy plant, with 2 sets of buds on 2 separate growths. That's always good, having Cattleyas setting off in 2 directions. Now the camera's pausing now. Somebody's actually stood in my way and won't move, and I forgot my horn to go beep beep, polite version. Now this one I did like. I love the subtle colours. I'm not sure again what it is. It's probably an Cattleya or something along those lines, but very subtle, attractive colours. I did like that one a lot. Right, only 1 entry in this section, and a nicely bloomed Masdevallia. I've got a feeling those blooms are looking a bit tired, but not too bad. And look at this one then. Best exhibit by a novice grower. Well, it should say only exhibit, because it was the only one. If you leave them at home, they don't get judged. Bring your plants in. And that's an easy one to get if you are a first timer, because there's never any entries. There's some more of the frags. Look at this one. Group of 3. How are you supposed to get a picture with all 3 of them in when one of them's touching the lights? Absolutely incredibly tall. As opposed to a nice group of Masdevallias, all at roughly the same level, staggered slightly towards the back, nicely arranged. But again, I think that orange one, although it's looking good, the blooms it's got, it looks like some have either gone or are still to come. But the groups of 3 had, as usual, some reasonable entries. I think those are Lycastes or something similar. Again, the blooms don't do a lot for me because they don't look very orchid-like. I suppose you could say Masdevallias don't look very orchid-like. It depends what your typical orchid flower shape in your mind actually is. Most people think of the big blousy Cattleyas when they think of orchids, or Cymbidiums again, but that's attractive. Lovely deep colours. I think that's Delanati or Delanatii, whichever it is. I've got one of those, but mine's the Vinny colour, which is the deep colours rather than the pale colours. If it ever blooms, don't hold your breath. And that's a more typical Paph. Very dull colours on that one, but attractive, nice shape. And this one was at Bournemouth. This is impossible to film. To get that plant in a single shot, you'd have to take it out in the car park and walk about 20 metres away. Absolutely huge. I think all of the Cymbidiums on the competitive tables were at Bournemouth. This one certainly was, and this one certainly was, and got best in show. And it got best hybrid in show here too, and got awarded with this lovely trophy, which I had to put up with for a year, sat on the mantelpiece for my prima donna. Not the best looking trophy. Nice tetragonum there, Dendrobium tetragonum, but that's the original form, not the gigantea. I think that was at Bournemouth as well, come to think of it. Distant memory now, a whole week ago. Now, this was Goldschmidtianum, and I was interested to see this in bloom because it's a parent of one of my hybrids, and I've forgotten which at this point. It's either Hibiki or Kuniko. It's the parent, or one of the parents of one of those two. And this is Dendrobium spectabile, I believe. A more alien version of my Alexandrae, but similar. And then this section a lot of people aren't too keen on. This is just floral design, but it must incorporate some orchids. So this is just your sort of table display type thing. But it must include orchids. You don't have to have grown them yourself. So it's just, like it says, art using something floral. It doesn't all have to be blooms. Nice little idea there, little silver tray with some moss and some just the blooms. And this one, you know, foliage, there's ivy in there, some pine and some orchids. So it's just floral design. So that's it, and that's it for another year, I'm afraid, with Wessex. See you next time.